Welcome back, everyone. I hope you're doing okay today. So today is an interesting day because I've got a poet you may not have heard of, Gerard Manley Hopkins. Let me show you. There's the title that I'll be reading from. It comes in that box, and look at this beautiful book. Wow. So Gerard Manley Hopkins, he's, like I said, interesting poet. He was a Jesuit priest, converted from Anglicanism, wrote poetry most of his life, even as an Anglican. When he became Catholic, he started deleting or burning all of his poems. I did the same thing when I converted to Catholicism. There were some poems that, try it as I may, I couldn't edit them to be Catholic, so I deleted them. It's a lot more poetic to burn them like he did, though. But yeah, so he wrote poems as a Catholic. I'm going to be reading one of them to you. And he didn't really publish any of them during his life. They were only published posthumously, and they took off. They actually influenced people of the 20th century greatly, the poets of that century. But he lived in the 19th century, and he had a very unique style. So he used a few different poetic devices to make his poems stand out, I guess you could say. First one was he used sprung rhythm, which it gives these poems sort of like a bouncy step to them. When you're reading them, it's just a lot of fun. So that's definitely true of the one that we're going to be reading today as Kingfishers Catch Fire, or as this one says, just as Kingfishers. Another thing that you're going to see in here is assonance, which is it's another one of those poetic devices. It uses a specific vowel repeated with close words, like words close together have the same vowel sound in them, and so it's not quite a rhyme because the endings usually aren't the same, but you still get that sense of familiarity, and it's almost musical in its quality. One example I found online is really good. She feels the heat beneath her feet. I think that's beautiful. So you're going to see some of that here. You're going to see some repetition of words. And another one of his things, this is more philosophical, but he had this idea of Inscape, which is a thing has its own essence, which is natural to it, and it's expressed in various different ways. So there's the inscape, which is the essence of the thing itself, and then there's the in stress, which is the spiritual energy through which it is expressed. You might imagine something like an oak tree. An oak tree has an essence, and it's expressed through its branches, its leaves, its the way that it behaves in a storm. And so each thing is unique unto itself for that very reason. There is the sort of essence of a man, but then there's the essence of CJ. And that would be my inscape, and then the way I express it would be my in stress. So we're going to read this poem. I want to read it one time through just so you can feel the way that it washes over you. All of these literary devices wash over you. It's a very, very confusing poem. I didn't understand a lick of it the first time I read it, and so I want you to experience that same confusion. Then we'll break it down a bit, and I'll read it to you again so that you can enjoy it with the privilege of understanding. So, without further ado, here it is, As Kingfishers Catch Fire. As kingfishers catch fire, dragonflies draw flame. As tumbled over rim and roundy wells stones ring. Like each tuck string tells, each hung bell's bow swung finds tongue to fling out broad its name. Each mortal thing does one thing and the same, deals out that being indoors each one dwells, selves, goes itself, myself it speaks and spells, crying, what I do is me, for that I came. I say more, the just man justices, keeps grace, that keeps all his goings graces, acts in God's eye what in God's eye he is, Christ. For Christ plays in 10,000 places, lovely in limbs and lovely in eyes not his, to the Father through the features of men's faces. Oh my goodness, it's so beautiful. So we're going to get into that essence part right now. The first thing to note is in the very first few lines, he's drawing analogies. So he's saying, as kingfishers catch fire, which a kingfisher is a type of fish. I think what he's saying is when they jump out of the water, when you see them in the water, they catch the sun at a certain angle, and so they catch fire. Dragonflies draw flame, same sort of thing. And then he says, as tumbled over rim and roundy well stones ring. That one's maybe the most clear, because we've all had the experience of throwing rocks, perhaps not into a well, but into something, and it makes a noise. And what he's saying here is that each stone that's thrown into the roundy well rings out with its own particular ring. No two stones are going to sound the same. And it's due to their different weight, their different shape, the density of them, the angle at which they're thrown perhaps. And so each of them are going to express themselves and their essence in different ways. That's their in-stress. And then he goes a little bit more confusing, like each tuck string tells. I don't really know what that means. I guess tuck strings can tell things. This one I do get though. Each hung bell's bow swung fine tongue to fling out broad its name. So when you swing the rope on a bell and it clangs out, what it's really doing is it's flinging out broad its name. And so a person's name is sort of their whole totality of being wrapped up in a sound. So that's what he's getting at here. Each mortal thing does one thing and the same. So there's a clear divide here now. Now he gave the examples, now here's the rule. So each mortal thing does one thing and the same. It deals out that being indoors, each one dwells. So whatever's dwelling inside is being dealt out. You may be walking through a forest and the trees are dealing out to you what dwells indoors. So you're walking through a world filled with different essences. He goes on, selves, goes itself. He does this thing where he uses nouns as verbs. So that's what he's doing here. Goes itself. Myself, it speaks in spells, crying, what I do is me, for that I came. So it's almost, again, incarnational. Christ came to do something, to give us something. And so likewise, each of us are planted here on earth to give something back to the world. What I do is me. Here I am. This is what I'm going to do. He gets into the particulars of what that means for humans. Next, there's 2 verses. This is the second verse now. I say more. The just man justices. We're going to stop there. Just man justicing, again, it's a noun acting as a verb. But the just man is, in his nature, going to do things in accord with justice in the Platonic sense. So he's expressing through himself what his essence is in relation to the divine. The divine is being itself, and he's capturing a small part of that, which is divine justice, and filtering it through his nature. Keeps grace. That keeps all his goings graces. Acts in God's eye what in God's eye he is. Here's the beautiful part. This is very high theology. You can even conceive of the whole world as just existing in the mind of God. And God is so real that to exist in the mind of God, or as he says, in God's eye, is to exist in reality. So we are all existing within his gaze. And then this is really the heartbeat of the second verse, Christ. So acts in God's eye, what in God's eye he is, Christ. There's that thump. For Christ plays in 10,000 places. He's existing, Christ, who is being itself, is existing in multiple different places, lovely in limbs and lovely in eyes, not his. And then I think the most beautiful line, to the Father through the features of men's faces. You know, when I converted to Catholicism, I had this big problem with the saints. I thought it's almost pagan to be praying to all these different people because they held a specific virtue or a specific love, like St. Francis had a love of nature, so I'm going to pray for him if I want my plant to grow. But I realize it's really not. You can think of God the Father as the divine light, the light of life, and he's shining himself, that pure essence, through Christ, who acts as a prism. And each refraction of that light is a different attribute of him. God is divinely simple, of course, but to our experience, he's multifaceted. So you might experience God's love of nature through St. Francis. He embodies that. So if I'm someone with a green thumb and I want to grow close to God, I can look to St. Francis and even ask for his intercession to that end. So I think that that's lovely. And then we also get this idea here, to the Father through the features of men's faces, that as we're walking through the world, we're encountering Christ in many different guises. There's two things that come to mind. First is C.S. Lewis's wonderful quote where he says, "Next to the Blessed Sacrament itself, the most holy thing available to your senses is your neighbor." So we have to treat each other with that due reverence. And the reason the person next to you is the most holy thing available to your senses is because they were made imago Dei, in the image of God. And so, there's that passage in Scripture where it says, Christ says, whatever you do to the least of these, you've done unto me. And we get an elaboration of that, Lord, when did we see you? When were you hungry and we not feed you? When were you naked and we not clothe you? Well, every single person who's hungry, every single person who's naked or in jail and in need of visitors, those are the people that you're through whom you're betraying Christ. Because Christ is present in all of them. To the Father through the features of men's faces. We all share a little spark of Christ in us. And to embody that spark is to be a Christian. To embrace it would be to become a Christian, a little Christ, Christian. So I hope that this gave you something to think about, something to contemplate. We're going to definitely return to Gerard Manley Hopkins in the future, but take another listen to this poem, and now that you know what it's about, and you have the tools to interpret it, enjoy it for its meaning and not just its sound. Here we go again, as promised. As kingfishers catch fire, dragonflies draw flame, as tumbled over rim and roundy well stones ring, like each tuck string tells, each hung bell's bow, swung fine tongue to find out broad its name. Each mortal thing does one thing and the same, deals out that being indoors each one dwells, selves, goes itself, myself it speaks and spells, crying, what I do is me, for that I came. I say more, the just man justices, keeps grace, that keeps all his goings graces, acts in God's eye what in God's eye he is, Christ. For Christ plays in 10,000 places, lovely in limbs and lovely in eyes not his, to the Father through the features of men's faces. Hope you enjoyed that. Have a wonderful day.